do you want?
I'm sorry. Since the meeting was aborted, I wanted to get some details regarding Avon, but perhaps now is not a good time.
Welcome to the WSJ Cafe. I'm John Jurgensen, an entertainment reporter with the Wall Street Journal, and it's my pleasure to be here with actor Harry Hamlin. He joins us just days after the mid-season finale of Mad Men. Harry didn't come onto the show until season 6, but his character, Jim Cutler, has emerged as a major force in the storyline of the show. Also here today is Evangeline Morphos. She's a professor at Columbia University in film and television. And for the past 4 years, she has contributed to the Mad Men recap and dissection weekly at the Speakeasy blog at the Wall Street Journal. Thanks for joining us, Evangeline. Harry, the mid-season finale is still fresh in our minds. Let's talk about Cutler's role in that finale. He had some showdowns, he executed some strategies, not all of them successfully. Talk about maybe what is the key scene for you in the finale and what it said about Cutler and where he's going.
Well, you know, the episode was called Waterloo. And I read the script and I thought, well, this is my Waterloo. This is, you know, Cutler he's kind of going down in this episode. And I went to Matt Weiner, the producer, one day, and I said, what? So I'm being exiled to Elba? What's happening? And he said, no, not you. And that led me to believe that maybe the episode was Don Draper's Waterloo. And then there's a scene in it where Robert Morse talks about Waterloo, and he's in reference to Don Draper, to John Hamm's character. So I figured that it wasn't my Waterloo. But then the Hollywood Reporter came out the next day in one of their dissections and said, you know, welcome to Harry Hamlin, the new Napoleon of Mad Men. So then I guess it was, at least in the audience's eyes, some of them, it was my Waterloo. You know, I am a very pragmatic businessman on this show, and I have to confront anyone who I believe is not doing their job well and not addressing the bottom line of the company. And of course, you know, who better to go after than Don Draper, who's an alcoholic and he's always ordering people around. And so I called him a drunk and a bully, and I've got more hate mail in the last 3 days. You know, my inbox was afire with people who were so upset with me about, you know, saying anything negative about Don Draper because he's beloved as a character.
Now you're going into that scene where you guys almost come to blows. He says, if you want to take a swing at me, go ahead. You call him a football player in a suit. Yeah. Is there anything you can tell us about how you or with John Hamm got ready for that scene? Is there, you know, is it just chatting and talking before the scene starts shooting, or do you have to prepare for that in a certain way?
Well, it's a very professional set, and we are expected to show up, you know, ready to shoot it in the first take and get it right in the first take. There's no discussion before. If there's a rehearsal, it's just for the camera, so that the camera's in the right spot. But there's no acting rehearsal before we shoot the scene. So, you know, we arrive and I know exactly where I'm coming from, and John knows where he's coming from, and Matt Weiner directed that episode, so he knew where he was coming from, and we just shot it. We got it pretty much, you know, in the first couple of takes.
Evangeline, what do you think about the Cutler character and what he brought to the dynamic of the show as he emerged?
It's very exciting, and I think up until your entrance, Don was always at war with himself. He was his own worst enemy. And then you entered and became his worst enemy on some level. So I thought it brought a different kind of dynamic. It began to shift the show from just about Don's character arc to about the business. And this new tension too, I mean, you talk a lot about the agency of the future. And you're actually right, your character is right about the direction that things are going in. And I thought this year was very much about the tension between technology and the future and this idea of the creatives and what they could bring to it.
Absolutely. And, you know, I mean, the Ginsberg character who got carried out in a stretcher because he cut off his nipple, he was afraid that this new automated age would come in and that all the people would be, you know, thrown out and replaced by computers and whatever, which is essentially what during that period did happen.
Right.
You know, people have found different ways to fit into the job world, and we've grown to kind of have a relationship with computers.
Right.
In those days, nobody knew what was going to happen, and Ginsberg was saying, no, you can't go there because we're all going to turn into automatons. And in some sense, he was correct. But I was the guy, you know, in the show who said, no, you know, we can't resist the wave of the future. We've got to go forward. And I got a lot of resistance from the other people on the show.
When you were talking about people sending you hate mail about Don, it also seemed to me that you're a pragmatist. So when the deal was good, as it is at the end,
Yeah,
you
it's a
go,
lot of money.
I'm in, it's a lot of money. And
Yeah.
that showed me something about your character, that you were not really antagonistic to Don, but you were the kind of leader that Bert was talking about, who sort of looked at the agency.
I like that. Yeah, of course, yeah.
I was still mad at you, but I forgave you.
Oh, no. Yeah, I am a pragmatist on the show, and I'm a bottom line guy.
Yeah.
And I want what's best for the business, and I want what's best for me. So you put those two things together, and I'm a kind of a jerk at the end of it. But I think I'm going to end up being a very wealthy jerk.
Yeah. I wondered, have you calculated how much money Cutler makes from that? And my guess is that he invests a lot of it in tech futures. So I see him down the road.
I don't know. I did see something online the day after the show, which somebody had gone through and calculated all the percentages because Slattery had said percent here, percent there, and they said the percentages were all off.
The Wall Street
somehow.
Journal commentators, the fans of the show were
Were the
cutting
percentages
the
off?
numbers.
I don't know. Were
Yeah.
the numbers off? I don't know.
You, like many actors who come onto the show, you're given very little information to start with about your character and the character's backstory. I'm wondering, for you as an actor, do you have a biography of him, either written or unwritten, that you've kind of fleshed out as the series has gone on, and you've learned more about him?
I have several iterations of that biography because it changes weekly. You know, when I first went onto the show, they told me nothing, like this much about the character. I didn't know his name, didn't know how old he was, didn't know what he did, didn't know why he was there. I mean, nothing. And I had some lines to say in the first episode that I was on. It was the night that we all discovered that Martin Luther King had been killed. We were in a big banquet, and I had to say a few words, but I didn't know why I was saying them. I didn't know to whom I was saying them, and I didn't know from where they were coming. But gradually, as the weeks went on, because I was really only hired for one show, and I think they wanted to find out whether I was going to, you know, be able to say the words correctly or what. I don't know. Remember all my lines. I don't know what they. But it was kind of a test, I guess, the first show. I mean, I have aged a bit, and they didn't know whether I was going to be either, you know, like vinegar or a fine wine at this point. So it turned. Obviously, I must have aged well because they brought me back, and they brought me back again, and then I would find out, for example, that that I had been married, because at one point I said, "Oh, I had a client who cupped my wife's breast." Okay, so that means I must have been married at some point.
And she has breasts.
And she still has breasts, and then at one point I said I was in the Air Force. Were you? So that led me to believe that I had a background in the military, but there was no story ever given to me, and no character description, other than Matt Weiner once said. I went up to him and I said, "Matt, give me something. Give me a little, you know, give me a tidbit, you know, because I have nothing to work with here." And he said, "Just remember that Cutler is continental." And I thought, okay. I went back and I looked up continental in the dictionary, and there's absolutely no reference to the word continental being an adjective referring to human beings. There are no continental people, because we all exist on continents.
Right.
You know, there are 7 of them, and people on each one of them. So a person who's continental is from land. So, so I didn't have much to go on there. And then he said finally, "Didn't you ever see Chris Walken in Saturday Night Live?" I said, "You mean Mr. Continental?" He said, "Yes." And so then I go, "Oh, okay. So I need an ascot, and I need some brandy, and that's the story." And I guess that's what he meant. So.
But as you learn these things, for example, that he flew over Dresden, you know,
I couldn't say that word. I couldn't say the line, but when I read that, I broke out laughing. I said, "Oh my God, I have to say this," and I have to say it without laughing, because Ted says, you know, something about you used to fly, and weren't you nervous? Didn't you? And I said, "Over Dresden? I wanted to live." Meanwhile, I was killing millions of people as I flew over Dresden, and so Cutler was obviously a bloodthirsty type.
But
as
how
well.
does that actually change the way you kind of calibrate the character in your mind? Or is it just, just fun to learn these things about this guy? Or does it actually change the way that you play him? in
Well,
Harvest
I
Moon?
mean, for me to say, over Dresden, I wanted to live. I still can't say it. I mean, why they made me the guy who had to kill all these people, I don't know. But I mean, I suppose it did. I mean, obviously, I'm someone who doesn't have much of a heart, right? Because I'm not thinking about all the people I killed. I'm thinking about, well, no, I was just doing my job, flying over Dresden, firebombing all these innocent people. I don't know. I hate to laugh about it because it was a horrible moment in history, but my character was part of it.
There's also a real physical aspect to Cutler. He's very erect, his back is
Right.
straight, his eyebrows always seem to be up,
He's
his
a-
chin is up. Talk about the physical part of that character.
Well,
where you found
I
that.
took him from my 10th grade Latin teacher, whose name was Demerit. Went to boarding school, and he had an interesting name for a teacher in a boarding school, Demerit. So he was he was very straight, and he always moved like this, and he always had his chin up like that. And when I first read Cutler, I thought, well, these two fit together. And then I had to say Great Caesar's Ghost in one episode, which was right out of Superman, the original black and white
Right,
George Reed's
right.
Superman. And I remember Perry White, who was the editor of the newspaper, used to say that from time to say, he'd say, Great Caesar's Ghost. And since I had to say that, I took a little bit of Perry White from the original series and mixed them up with Mr. Demerit, my Latin teacher, and that's how Cutler was born.
Yes, something about that character on the page brought you back to that time. And that,
Well,
that
yeah,
teacher.
serious, and very, I don't know, demanding of respect, put it that way.
Well, speaking of going back in time too, all of us who remember the moon landing remember exactly where we were. And it struck me that your character we didn't get to see with his family and watching. But was that whole evocation of the moon landing and the sort of magic of technology, did that start to resonate with both you as an actor and with the character?
Well, I thought it was a wonderful moment because he captured that time in history when the television became the focus of the family. It's no longer. Now there's a television in every room, and everybody's looking at their little devices, and everybody's off watching their own thing, whatever it might be. But in those days, there was one television, it was in the living room, and if something was happening
Right.
in the world, everybody sat down. There was no replay. There were no tapes. You had to watch it right there live. And so the whole family would gather and sit around and watch it. And I thought it was so great the way, he switched from family to family with everybody just like this. Staring at the TV. It's
Mesmerized.
like really, and that's the way it used to
Yeah.
be. No, not really so much anymore.
Did you shoot a scene for that wasn't included, or was Cutler left absent?
No, everything that is shot is just as is, yeah.
So we won't force you to waste your breath on talking about the next part of the season, which we know you can't talk about.
There's a
However,
gun pointed at me from somewhere.
they're always there. But can you speak in general about Cutler's trajectory, what we know about him now, and where he might be headed?
I cannot.
You don't know where he's headed.
I cannot
Yeah.
speak about any trajectory whatsoever. It stops the moment that I said it's a lot of money. I can't talk about it after that.
Because you also don't know about it after that, correct? Or do you know?
I can't tell you whether I know or I don't know. It is very cagey.
They'd have to kill him.
Information out of me.
They'd have to kill him if
Very
he
cagey.
Well, knowing and not telling is two different things. I also wonder if, every actor throughout his career and sometimes has to fight for their character, either to get more screen time or to develop the character in a way that's maybe not on the page. Have you ever pushed back against Matt Weiner when it comes to Cutler, or tried to challenge him on a certain aspect of his character?
No, absolutely. I would never push back. I mean, they are so skilled at what they do. And now Robert Towne is on the staff, and the writers of Mad Men are, the best in the business, and as is Matt. So I would never question anything that is being said or how it's being said. If there's anything that I read that is that I don't quite know how to say, I know there's a way to say it, and I know that way is the right way, and I know that's already gone through their mind, and they've figured out why I had to say it that way, and I'll have to find it. I have to go back and say the words every which way until I find out the right way to do it.
Is that the way you've always been on set, or is this the most reverent you've ever been when it came to?
Well, this and Shameless are the two most reverent
Yeah.
I've ever been, because on that set, John Wells, who writes that, doesn't even allow what are called sides, you know, the little mini scripts that most shows have. They have them on Mad Men, so you can refer to your lines, but on Shameless, you have to know your lines cold, and they have to be exact before you arrive at the studio. So.
So there's no negotiation.
There's no negotiation, none whatsoever. On LA Law years ago, I did make some suggestions, and they actually took them sometimes, not all the time. But there were times when they took, I wanted my character on LA Law, for example, to have a midlife crisis in season 3 or 4 or whatever, and become an alcoholic and then have to rinse out from that. And they put that in, actually, so it was good.
Well, maybe you can talk just a little bit about the ending that we did see, because that whole song and dance number was so wonderful.
Were you in the room when Robert Morse did his? And sorry for the spoiler, the belated spoiler alert on this.
I think it's okay. I mean, if people haven't seen it, they will eventually. But I was not. That was, it's a closed set for when you're not on the set. I mean, I was not working the day that was shot. But I knew it was coming, and I was delighted when I saw it, and I cried. I mean, I watched that, and it was such an emotional moment. Even though I knew it was coming, it brought a tear to my eye. So.
Well, Harry, Evangeline, thanks so much for talking about it today, and we look forward to the final run of Mad Men in 2015.
So,
Thanks, everybody.